Lesson Objective 4. Collect data in the iForm app. For this lesson, I'm going to go step by step through a list of items that we're going to complete. Once we complete that task, I'll check it off our list. If at any point you want to import these forms into your account so that you can also test as I go through it, feel free. They're located in the course materials in Zerion Academy. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a quick overview of the iForm home screen. You'll notice here at the top we have our title. This is configured within the web portal. Underneath that, we have the ability to search for particular forms. Now in this case, I only have 2 forms, so it's pretty easy. But as you build your forms, you may notice that this iForm home screen starts to get really busy. When that happens, you have that ability to go in and search. You'll also see up in the right-hand corner, we're able to sync the device. We can also sync the device by pulling down the screen. Now let's go through our next step, form information. For each form, you'll notice this small little eye icon. If you tap the icon, it'll give you more information about the form. So for instance, if I tap that icon for the first form, it tells me that the form is designed for the public link data collection only. So knowing that, as the owner of that form and as an admin, I would go through and actually unassign it from this user's device so that they don't see it. Next, you'll see the second form that we have here, Getting Started with iFormBuilder, Course 1, User Intake. There's 2 things I want you to notice about this. The first thing is we have a light green border around this form. That's configured at the form builder level. So if you do want to have a custom color scheme for your forms, that is an option. Additionally, each of these form icons can be configured within the form builder. But more information on that on a later day. For now, just tap the info button and then go down here where it says version. Once you do that, you're able to see more information about the form. You're able to see the form ID, what version form it is, the last time it was modified, who it was modified by, when the form was created, as well as who created it. This allows you to contact the correct user or correct person if you have any questions about the form. I'm going to go back here, and that's all of our information for our form. Now, let's go through this process of filling out a form. At the top, you'll notice I have a quick description of this form. This is something when you are building out forms that I highly recommend so that users know why that form was designed, or you're able to give them any directions that they may need. Now let's go through this process. The first field here is a text element. You'll notice that this is defaulted to my first and last name. This is using some of iFormBuilder built-in functions to populate form fields. This is a great way to save time and user entry. I did keep it as a text element in case the information wasn't being populated. That can happen if the user's first and last name wasn't included when the user was created within the web portal. The next field here is for the birth date. I use the SSN or the Social Security number element to capture this information. This allows me to create a mask that the user has to follow to put in the information. Next, we have the multi-photo element. This allows the user to capture up to 6 photos very quickly. Now you'll notice as I do this that I only see the option to capture new photos, and that's with the camera at the bottom. This is a customization you can do as you build the form. If you allow the user to also access the camera's library, there would be another icon listed. So I'm going to go ahead and take a few photos here. Then I'll hit the back button. This allows me to go in and review the photos that I just captured and also add little captions by tapping the buttons. Once I'm done adding my captions, I hit the Done button in the top right-hand corner. This brings me back to my parent form or that top layer form. Underneath the multi-photo element, I also have masking for the phone number. Now I show you this because I want you to see that you can build out a form to truly capture better data from the user. The email address is another field that is being pre-populated but can be edited later on. We then have our location element. This is just going through and capturing where I'm located right now. You can parse this information out. You can also have it automatically generated. When you're building out your form, just keep in mind there are a lot of options when it comes to customizations. As we scroll down, because this is an intake form, I'm asking the user to place in their device information. What's nice is that here, these top two fields are considered read-only elements. And these are pre-populating the information using iFormBuilder built-in functions. So the user doesn't have to go in and put that information in. It's calling to the device's information. Now let's assume that this user is capturing additional information for other devices. So I'm going to click the Yes button. Actually, before I do that, I want to show you something really quickly. If I go and hit the Done button, a message pops up and tells me that this is saved as a draft. This is because this question is required. So any question that you see that has an asterisk at the end is required to be completed before the user can submit the record. So I'm going to say, yes, I do have additional devices. Once I do that, a new field appears. So this is using some of our smart logic or our smart controls, which allow you to only show questions that apply to the user. In this case, this shows a subform element where the user will go in and fill out a record for any additional devices that they need to register. So once I tap that subform element, it launches what appears as a new page. So this actually is a separate form that has its own table that is capturing and holding on to this information, but it is connected to that parent form, that form that we were just on, the first layer. So to start the form, I see a lookup element, and this is actually going to show me a list or a database filled with different device models. If you have a certain model in mind, you can search for it. Maybe I know I need to register another iOS device, so I can search for iOS, and then I see a list of the operating systems models, and I'll select the correct one. And once I do that, it brings me back into the subform record. I then have the option to type in the device model and device type if the model and type weren't in that lookup element or that database that I first searched through. Once I do that, I am required to fill in the OS version. I'll say 10. And once completed, I'll hit the Done button. Now you notice I have some directions at the bottom here. This is another feature that you can add to a form where once the user hits the Done button, it brings them back to a blank form to complete. This way they don't have to go back and forth between the parent form and the subform to capture more records. If they're done, maybe I only had to register that one device. I'm going to hit the X, and that brings me back to my parent form. At the bottom of this intake form, I then ask for the user to tap here if all the information above is correct. So this is just a quick way for them to review their information. Once they review it, they tap the field. I ask them to sign. And then it captures and pre-populates the date and time that the user collected their information. And then at the bottom, I've added a field where the user can assign the record to their supervisor. In this example, because I'm the only one in this account, it's going to assign it back to my username once I open the list. If I had more users in this account, I could select the supervisor's name, or I could default it to the supervisor's name. What this is going to do is once I'm done with this record and I sync it to the cloud, it's actually going to assign the record back down to my username. This allows me to go back through and add or edit anything that I may need to do. If I was assigning to a supervisor, I could also have it where there's a field for the supervisor to sign off saying they reviewed all this information and everything looks correct. Now after I hit the Done button, it does bring me to this table screen. And this shows me the records that I have saved on the device right now. At this point, you've heard me say the term form and you've heard me say the term record. What I want to point out here is when we say the word form, that is just referring to these questions. So there's no data actually associated to a form. What happens is once you start putting in data, that turns into a record. So a record has data, a form does not. Just keep that in mind as we go forward a little bit more here. So I'm going to hit the Done button again, and it tells me that this is saved as a draft. This is because I have another required field here at the bottom where I need to sign off before I can have this record synced to the cloud. Maybe I don't have time or I'm not ready to sync it to the cloud, so I can also hit Save in the top right-hand corner and then hit the X button. This allows me to go back into that record later on and complete it when I'm ready. So let's go through our steps here. We filled out our form. We talked through the difference between a form and a record. The next thing I want us to do is to talk through the list view or table view versus the map view. What this is referencing is on our device here, this screen is either referred to as the list view or the table view. This is really helpful to get a quick snapshot about what is contained in that record. It's also helpful because you can customize what fields are being displayed. So when you are building out forms, keep that in mind that this table is customizable. When we look at the bottom, we have three icons. We have the delete, the plus, and then our map view. Right now, we're going to go into that map view. Once in the map view, if I have Wi-Fi or cellular connection, it will show me where the records are located on a map. Now it'll only show me the records that are still on the device. So if I've uploaded 30, 40 records, I'm not going to see those. I'll only see the ones that are still saved and stored on the device. You have a few options when it comes to the map view. You can zoom in, and that's done with the second icon. Then I can also pinch and zoom out. I can scroll to where I'm located. That's where that first icon is located. And then our third icon here is our map view. So you can customize and choose which map view that you'd like to look at. And lastly, you can choose how those points appear on the map. So we have three options with this particular form. We have modified location, created location, and capture current location. Now the third one here, that's that element that we added to our form, and where we ask the user to capture their current location. So you could actually have 3 different reference points when you're looking at the map. The first 2, the modified location, is the last time that that record was edited or touched, and then the created location was the first time or the first location that the user started that record in. So just keep that in mind. If you have more location elements in your form, you'll have a longer list. So this will show you all the location elements that you have. I hit the check mark. If I select one of the records, it'll show me that table view, and I can actually open the record from this view. Whenever I want to jump back down to or go back to the table view to see all the records, I can do that by tapping the icon in the bottom right-hand corner. So that's the difference between list view and map view. Now we have additional options here. So for this next step, we're going to talk through save, done and submit, delete, copy, and print. So we already talked a little bit about that save button. So that's where when you start a record and let's say we just started it, we have some of the fields done, and then we have to go to lunch. So just tap that save button, top right hand corner, and then you can exit back, and you'll see that it's saved within this table. Now if you're looking at this and wondering, how am I going to know which record is which? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And that all comes down to these record status icons. Now if I open up one of these saved records, I can start filling it in again and make sure I get all the required fields here. And then at the bottom, you'll notice we have the done button. Now your device might be saying submit. That is an option that you can customize when you go into your iForm web portal, your iFormBuilder web portal. And that's something that a company admin can customize if it says done or submit. So that is going to be brought up in some of our later training. In this case, I'll hit done, and I'm brought back to this table view. And at the bottom, you'll see you have the delete icon. If you don't see the delete icon, that means the form builder has chosen to hide that. The delete icon allows you to delete all the draft records, or delete uploaded records, or delete all the records off the device. And you'll notice with such power comes great responsibility, and that is why the form builder might choose to hide that delete icon or that trash can icon. But don't worry, people can still delete even if that icon is hidden. You can delete by taking your finger and sliding over. You'll have that delete option for each individual record, so it's a little bit harder to delete items that way. You'll also see that you have the option to print and to copy. So that gives us a nice little overview of our save, done, submit, delete, copy, and print icons. Next on our list is to go through our record status icons. So let me just jump over here. So with the form that we started, we have these 3 icons being displayed. If we go back to our form home screen, we also see those icons. These are designed to quickly give you a visual cue of the status of each record that's still on the device. As we go through this list here on the left-hand side, you'll see that there are more icons listed there than what we have on our device. The first icon we have here is the check mark. If you are storing your records on the device and they're not deleting on upload, every time a record has been synced to the cloud, it'll have a little check mark next to it. Next, if you are assigning records to a user's device, like using the assigned to element, which we have in this form that we're testing. Once the records have been downloaded to the device, they'll have this icon with them. Once their records have been assigned to a user, downloaded to the device, they can then edit and make changes to that record. The pencil icon, which we've seen a few times here, is just recognizing that the record is complete and it is saved as a draft on the device. A record that is saved on the device and is incomplete cannot be synced to the cloud. So keep that in mind. Next, we have our timer icon. This allows you to quickly identify that that record is ready to be synced the next time you have Wi-Fi or cellular connection. And lastly, we have our partial sync icon. If you're in an area where the Wi-Fi or cellular connection is not very strong, then you'll see that partial sync icon. Now let's go ahead and sync the device and see what icons we then have up for our form. All right, so we have a quick report. It tells us exactly how many records were uploaded, and then it also tells us that we have records downloaded. So here we have our icon in here saying that a new record was assigned to us and then can be accessed here. All right, let's go to our list again. The last thing we have here on our list is to managing data on an iPad. If you don't have an iPad, then unfortunately this next step does not apply to you. This is only available on iPads. On the iPad, you'll notice at the very bottom it says collect and manage. So by default, we always see this collect side. If we go into manage and we do have Wi-Fi or cellular connection, we're able to see all the forms that we have view rights for the records. So you'll see here I have 3 different forms that I'm able to view the records for. The first one I'm going to go into here is the one that we actually just captured data for. So it's the Getting Started with iFormBuilder user intake form. As I look at the records, I can scroll through and I can see that there are some records here that are missing information. I can also go in and view the record in more detail by tapping the ID number. If I notice that it is missing some information, I can assign it to my user. So I can assign the record to my user here and they'll be able to access it on their device to finish completing it. If I think everything looks good and I want to email it, I have that option. And I can choose what user to or email address to email the HTML version of the record to. And lastly, I have the option to print. Now if I go back to this Manage Home screen, then you'll see I can refresh in the top right hand corner, but I can also send a notification. So if you are an admin user and you need to send a notification to your users, please finish record assigned. And once I select my user, I can hit the little button in the right hand corner. That's going to send a notification to the user. The user receives it, and then it's able to then go back and finish that record that's been assigned to them. The last thing I want to point out here under the Manage tab is that once you go into a particular form, you can also view all the records on a map, and you can filter the data. So if you're looking for a specific type of response, then you can add a condition, sort it, or filter it so that you're able to get a better idea of how the data was captured, or if you need to assign records back to a particular user. And that's it for the Manage tab. And that's actually it for Course 1. So if you have any questions, please let me know and I'm happy to help. Also, definitely check out all the resources in Zerion Academy and the Zerion Customer Success Center. Thank you.